Welcome to Tom's True Crime. Today we take you to Trenton, New Jersey. Also, I'd love to know, where are you from? Andrew Solfsson was born on September 18, 1983, in New Jersey. He and his brother were raised in a working-class family. Their father worked in construction, while their mother took care of the home but also worked part-time at a diner to support the family budget. As Andrew grew up, he felt a bit ashamed of his background because he achieved outstanding academic results and was the first in his family to pursue higher education. He dreamed of joining a higher social class in the future. He began studying at the State University of New York, where he chose electronic engineering combined with business management. It was during his studies in 2004 that Andrew met Kathy. She was his peer and had three brothers, two of whom were stepbrothers and two stepsisters. Her father had died when she was still a child, and her mother remarried, creating a blended family. As a teenager, Kathy had many passions and ideas about her future. She was a star on her school's track and field team, an excellent swimmer training to become a lifeguard, and was interested in law, dreaming of attending law school. Eventually, she decided to study English literature. The two were initially drawn together by their shared love of sports. Her personality was outgoing, easy to get along with, and popular. Andrew was more reserved and calm. Despite their different temperaments, something drew them to each other, and soon they became a couple. Andrew didn't hide the fact that he took the relationship very seriously. He often introduced Kathy as the woman he intended to spend the rest of his life with. Kathy was also enchanted by him. She appreciated that Andrew was very polite, always opened doors for her, kept his promises, and openly adored her. By 2006, they have both graduated and found work. Kathy and Andrew rented an apartment in New Jersey. Kathy started working as an English teacher, while Andrew began his career in a company connected to the U.S. Army's Research and Development Division, holding an important and responsible position. The couple was very happy together. One day, Andrew posted online, "Wedding with the most amazing woman in the world this summer." This turned out to be an announcement, as on August 10, 2008, during a fairy tale ceremony, the couple vowed to love each other for life. They spent their honeymoon traveling around the Mediterranean. Kathy and Andrew were fulfilled both personally and professionally, so they decided it was time for the next step. They wanted to start a family, and just a year after the wedding, Kathy became pregnant. In April 2010, their dream came true when their daughter Molly was born. The proud father even created a special website to post family photos for their loved ones, including the grandparents who wanted to see their granddaughter as often as possible. The site was filled with portraits of a happy family. It seemed that the three of them were the perfect family, even though the differences in their personalities were still very noticeable. Kathy had built such fantastic relationships with her students that even when she was at home with her daughter and not working temporarily, they would sometimes call their favorite English teacher for help. She also had a close-knit group of friends, including other teachers and students' mothers. Andrew, on the other hand, remained a loner and struggled with insecurities about his background. He was convinced that he couldn't fully advance in his career and wasn't sufficiently appreciated at work. He was still ashamed of his working-class family background. Andrew's salary was $10,000 a month. The grandparents loved spoiling little Molly and enjoyed spending every moment with her. The sight of Kathy's stepfather with the little girl was particularly heartwarming because his appearance suggested a completely different personality. Steve was a very tall and burly man with a stern expression, and he was also an avid gun collector. The moments when he cuddled and entertained his granddaughter with a twinkle in his eye brought smiles to the faces of all who witnessed it. Steve also tried to bond with his son-in-law, attempting to share his passion. He invited Andrew to join in recreational shooting, which Andrew eagerly agreed. In January 2011, the family of three moved into a rented house. It was very comfortable, had 4 bedrooms, high ceilings, was nearly new, and even had a hot tub in the garden. The only thing it lacked was furniture, which they bought. They also rented a black BMW. Wanting to celebrate the new chapter in their lives, Kathy arranged a meeting with her friends and invited them over. In the days leading up to the gathering, she focused on unpacking everything, cleaning the house, and preparing it for guests. Before the planned meeting, she also arranged to have lunch with her mother to thank her for helping organize the new space. On January 21, 2011, the police received a missing person report. A woman called saying she couldn't reach her friend Kathy, who was supposed to be at home with her husband and their 9-month-old daughter. The couple had invited several people over for dinner that day, but no one greeted them at the agreed-upon time. Despite the house being fully lit and Kathy's phone ringing inside, no one answered. The guests noticed a note on the door with a brief message from Kathy's mother asking for her to call. It turned out that she also had not been able to reach Kathy, despite their scheduled meeting. Furthermore, she had not been able to contact her since Friday. The women decided to notify the police together. Officers took the report and visited the family's home, but no one answered the door. The doors were locked, but through the window, they could see that in addition to the lights, a television was also on. Since it was winter, carbon monoxide-related incidents were quite common, so the police decided to enter the home. However, a quick inspection of the interior revealed nothing suspicious. Classical music was playing in the child's room, and there was a bathtub filled with water in the bathroom. Everything looked as though the parents had planned to bathe their daughter, but had unexpectedly had to leave. The officers noticed a pile of bedding on the bed and the master bedroom blankets and comforters tossed as if someone had just been sleeping there. But there was no one in the house, and the garage was empty. The officers checked the license plate of the vehicle the couple drove to see if there had been any accidents, but they couldn't find any information. In this situation, the police had little they could do. There were no laws preventing adults from leaving without notifying their family. Everything indicated that the couple had suddenly left with their daughter. In response to the missing persons report, the police released a brief notice describing the situation and providing the couple's car registration number, ensuring that if another police unit spotted the vehicle, the local officers would be notified. However, Kathy's friends and family were deeply unsettled. Kathy had close relationships with them, and it was unimaginable that she would leave without informing them. Kathy's stepfather decided to leverage his connections, calling an old neighbor and longtime friend who was a retired police officer and former lead investigator in the Crime Prevention and Control Unit at the district attorney's office. The officer assured him that he would make a few important calls and warned him against entering Kathy's home, explaining that there might be crucial evidence that should not be disturbed. This call accelerated the investigation. The police began interviewing neighbors and rechecked the couple's vehicle. Eventually, they decided to enter the Solfssons' home once more, but this time a foul odor struck them as soon as they crossed the threshold. It quickly became clear that the smell was coming from the upper floor. As the officers climbed the stairs, the stench became unbearable near the master bedroom door. Inside, everything appeared as it had before. One of the officers approached the bed and gently lifted the hastily thrown blanket, immediately spotting a woman's foot beneath it. Upon pulling back more of the bedding, they discovered two bodies, 27-year-old Kathy curled up in the fetal position and 9-month-old Molly lying beside her. The medical examiner was called to the scene. The autopsies revealed that Kathy had died from a gunshot wound to the head while her daughter had been shot in the abdomen. Additionally, numerous bruises were found on the baby's face, suggesting that she had been severely hit or beaten. The investigation quickly located the family's car at the airport parking lot. Although the doors were locked, the keys were still in the ignition. Inside the car, the police found keys to Kathy's parent house, but there were no traces of blood. At this point, it was clear that Kathy and Molly's bodies had been found in the Solfsson home, but Andrew was nowhere to be found. Given that the car was at the airport, investigators assumed that Andrew had fled. It was only now that Kathy's parents realized how little they knew about their son-in-law. They had never fully understood what he did for a living, something related to computers, but he had never clearly explained. Now, another detail struck them as suspicious. He never paid in cash, always using credit cards. He had assured them he had money, but it was supposedly tied up in overseas accounts. Unexpectedly, Kathy's parents received a call from Andrew's father, who claimed that Andrew had contacted him, saying he had left the house for 20 minutes, and when he returned, his wife and daughter were already dead. He allegedly called the police and then went to Kathy's parents' house, but found no one home. Confused and scared, he called his father from the airport and informed him that he was returning to California. Shortly after, Andrew himself called Kathy's stepfather, Steve, telling him the same story, but omitting the part about calling the police. Andrew likely realized that Steve was involved enough in the investigation to know that no such call had been made. The police held a press conference to inform the public of the tragic events, though they emphasized that there was no official suspect at that stage. Investigators contacted Andrew, who was staying at his parent home, and conducted a 2-hour interview. Andrew confirmed that he knew his family was dead. He claimed that on the morning of January 20th, he left the house to buy some computer parts, returning around 11 a.m., although he couldn't explain why he'd been gone so long. It was noted that he had told his father he was only out for 20 minutes. He then said he entered the bedroom, where he discovered Kathy and Molly's bodies. He claimed to have seen a gunshot wound on his daughter and blood on her mouth and nose, details that the investigators on the scene had not initially observed. Finally, he went to the airport, flying to California to be with his family during this difficult time without informing anyone of the tragedy. Throughout the interview, Andrew remained calm and emotionless. Andrew spent the next 2 weeks at his family's home. During this time, Kathy and Molly's funeral took place, attended by over 500 people, but Andrew's absence caused considerable controversy. After the phone interview, the police felt they had many leads to follow. They particularly noted that Andrew had mentioned his father-in-law's gun collection several times. Deciding to investigate further, they conducted specialized tests in a lab and confirmed that Kathy and Molly had been shot with one of Steve's guns. Moreover, DNA found in the weapon matched Andrew's DNA. In addition, Kathy's DNA was found on the front and inside the barrel of the gun, indicating that the weapon was very close to her when she was shot in the head. On January 25th, the detectives leading the investigation traveled to California to meet Andrew. Despite the confirmed appointment, Andrew did not show up at the agreed location, and it was discovered that he no longer lived with his parents. On February 9th, he was arrested after police located him at a Starbucks. Investigators also secured his laptop and searched the hard drive, uncovering what amounted to a second secret life. It turned out that Andrew had not been working. In fact, he had resigned from his job before moving into the house with Kathy and Molly, citing family matters as the reason. Over several years, he had created several websites offering get-rich-quick schemes. Having once fallen victim to such a scam himself, he suddenly decided that it was a great business idea. He sold a starter kit for $2,000 that supposedly enabled buyers to earn $2 million annually. Interestingly, he made some money from these ventures, which helped him get by when he was unemployed, but wasn't enough. He then decided to start living on credit. However, he didn't stop searching for a profitable, though not necessarily legal, business. He began selling software copies and textbooks on eBay. At some point, however, he stopped sending the purchased items to users, leading eBay to block his account and launch an investigation. Andrew also regularly visited various websites with perverse erotic content and searched online for companionship. By the time his wife and daughter died, Andrew had accumulated significant credit card debt. Kathy's family released a statement read at a press conference, expressing their shock and heartbreak. The statement said that Kathy and Molly loved Andrew very much and trusted him as a husband and father. The family was devastated and could not comprehend how such love and trust had been so deeply betrayed. The prosecutor presented the most likely version of events. On Friday morning, Andrew used the gun he had taken without his father-in-law's consent and shot his wife in the head while she lay in bed in their rented home. He then fired a second shot into Molly's abdomen. Later that same day, Andrew returned the gun to his in-laws' house. He left for the airport around 5 a.m. on Saturday and boarded a plane that departed at 8:15 a.m. The next day, the police discovered the bodies. The unemployed computer technician had been facing financial difficulties due to debts and failing online businesses. He had no money or tangible assets, yet he and his wife had rented a house for $2,700 a month just days before the murders. Meanwhile, Andrew's online ventures were collapsing. His eBay business had been shut down following a series of customer complaints. Neither Andrew nor Kathy had a job, and their bills continued to mount. Andrew was charged with double murder and extradited to the United States. He pleaded not guilty and changed his account of events. This time, he claimed that when he returned home from shopping, he found his wife and daughter dead, with a gun belonging to his father-in-law near their bodies, implying that Kathy had shot herself. How did the gun end up back at her parents' house? Andrew said that he had placed it there himself to protect his wife's reputation, knowing that people would judge her for killing little Molly. However, his version of events sounded absurd. Given the position of the bodies, Kathy would have had to hold her daughter with her left hand, aim at Molly's abdomen with her right hand, fire a shot that passed through the child and into herself, then position the gun against her own head and pull the trigger. Analyzing the gun's dimensions, such an action was physically impossible, leading investigators to catch Andrew in another lie. Before the trial began, Andrew's defense attorneys filed a motion for him to be released on bail and await trial at his parent home. The court denied this request. The defense then sought to exclude all evidence collected from the couple's home, arguing that the police had entered without a warrant, but this motion was also denied. The trial began in June 2013, 2.5 years after Kathy and Molly's deaths. The prosecution's case relied primarily on circumstantial evidence, though the DNA traces found on the gun were undeniable. The prosecutor also pointed to the obvious motive behind the crime. The family's life was not as ideal as it seemed to everyone, because Andrew was not who he pretended to be. In the courtroom, all of his online scams were revealed, including his obsession with erotic websites and conversations indicating that he was searching for sex online. Most shockingly, an expert testified that 4 days before the murders, a password-protected file was created on Andrew's laptop. During that time, he was searching for topics related to crimes involving the use of a knife. The prosecution also focused on Andrew's behavior after the death of his wife and daughter. He made multiple attempts to withdraw money from ATMs, but the limit on the couple's joint account had been exceeded, so he was only able to withdraw $800 using a credit card. On the same day, he purchased a one-way ticket to California. The prosecutor emphasized that Andrew did not call emergency services or inform his in-laws that their daughter and granddaughter were dead. Instead, he left them at home and fled, only calling his father-in-law the next day. Steve, Andrew's father-in-law, testified that during one of their conversations after the truth had come out, they tried to discuss funeral arrangements. Steve told the court that he thought he heard something suspicious, but at the time he wanted to believe it was just a slip of the tongue. Andrew had asked if Kathy and Molly could be buried together, adding, "Because that's how I left them. That's how I found them." The prosecution portrayed Andrew as a cold-hearted killer, a fraud, and a failed husband and father who shot his wife and child in their own bedroom. The defense, however, sought to counter this image by arguing that Andrew loved his daughter and wife, and that everything he did and said afterward was driven by that love. All the witnesses testified that the marriage seemed happy, that Andrew and Kathy were friends who loved and respected each other. No one knew about Andrew's double life, and probably Kathy didn't either. The defense did not call any witnesses, and Andrew declined to present his version of events to the jury. However, his lawyers tried to convince the jury that perhaps Kathy was not a content young mother. Maybe she was actually suffering from postpartum depression. The attorney suggested that this case might not be a double murder, but a murder self-exit. They argued that Kathy might have killed her daughter first and then herself. According to the defense, this theory was supported by the presence of gunshot residue on both of Kathy's hands. On the other hand, no such residue was found on the items Andrew had touched that day. They accused the prosecution of having only one suspect from the beginning and never considering the case from a broader perspective. The jury had to decide whether Andrew was a fraudster, a sexually frustrated husband drowning in debt who decided to murder his wife and child before the truth came out, or a loving, devoted husband who fought to protect his wife's reputation. The verdict was delivered on June 25, 2013. Andrew was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Andrew's parents stood by him, devastated, believing in their son's innocence and supporting the theory that Kathy had committed self-exit. The verdict was appealed, and Andrew argued that the evidence collected during the search of the home without a warrant should have been excluded from the trial. However, the appeal was rejected in August 2017, and in January 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the case, effectively exhausting all legal avenues. The sentence for first-degree murder is fixed by law. It is life without the possibility of parole. The prosecution requested that consecutive sentences be imposed and that there is more than one victim. However, the judge was concerned that if consecutive sentences are imposed, people who are not familiar with the law will have the erroneous impression that there is a possibility of release from prison on a sentence of first-degree murder when there is not. As a matter of law, a sentence for first-degree murder is an actual life sentence. Absent a pardon by the governor, there is no possibility of release from prison. A consecutive sentence would be purely symbolic. For that reason, the judge imposed concurrent sentences for the murders of Kathy and Molly Solfsson. That means that the actual sentence that the defendant will serve will be for both murders. In addition, the judge imposed a period of probation concurrent on the charges of possession of ammunition and possession of a firearm, with a condition that the defendant not profit in any way from the sale of his story, either by way of book or otherwise, to any media outlet. Andrew's parents said, We know that our son Andrew is innocent, and we are devastated to learn that the evidence points to Kathy murdering our child and then committing self-exit. I knew Kathy was depressed. Our son will now go to jail for loving, honoring, and protecting his wife's memory. We knew Andrew would not receive a fair trial. We will continue to fight for our innocent son with a hope that one day justice will prevail. Thank you for being with us. If you'd like to support our channel and help us to continue to make content, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us so much and we really appreciate it.